Need like some music. We need some waiting music. Make that happen for next week.
Right. Waiting music would be awesome. All right. I think we're ready to get started. So welcome. I have totally forgotten what number episode this is. It's probably 12,
like 12, 13.
Somewhere around 12 or 13.
You know that. Yeah.
It is our first episode of 2021. We have said goodbye to 2020.
Hallelujah.
Some of us are grateful. I think most of us are grateful to say goodbye to 2020. I know I am, and start 2021 fresh. So we are super excited about this episode because we have the wonderful Miss Erin Pride here with us to talk about what you should do when students bring up issues of race in the studio. What we're learning and seeing in these years, way different than when I was dancing, is that a lot of studios are highly diverse. You will have a large range of racial identities represented in your classes and in your faculty. And that racial makeup is changing like daily. And children are inquisitive by nature. The internet is available to everybody and social media is unavoidable. So undoubtedly questions are going to come up that they may not even feel comfortable asking their parents, but as mentors and people that they feel safe with may ask us, or they may be talking amongst themselves. So it's important that we take these moments and use them as learning moments. And as catalysts for internal and external change. So that's what we're here to learn about today. We're happy to be here. This is a pivotal moment in history. We actually had no idea how pivotal this moment in history would be.
Very unplanned, yes.
Yes, totally unplanned, but you know, things work out for the good, right? We're here and our whole goal is to help dance educators navigate these waters that can sometimes be extremely uncomfortable or extremely hard. So that's what we're here for. So in this moment, we can be divided in this country, or we can come together. And we know as dancers, we're going to make sure that everybody comes together. Just want to do a few house rules here before we start, because this is a topic that can be extremely tense. We want to make sure that we're not talking about political parties, elections, or candidates, or who you voted for, or it's totally irrelevant in this conversation. We are talking about how to best navigate when the inevitable moment that one of these issues comes up in your studio, and how to make sure that the person who brings it up, as well as the students who are receiving it, come away with it with a positive outcome. So there's no hate speech, no harassment, no abusive language will be tolerated during this session. I'm sure none of you will do that, but just know that we won't tolerate that. And our purpose is to be better prepared to provide a positive learning environment in the face of tough issues. So with that being said, please get in the chat. Please make sure that in Zoom you're in the chat, in Facebook you're in the chat, ask questions, make comments. We're going to be responding to them. And I just really want everybody to learn more about Erin right now. So Bree, will you please introduce everybody to Erin?
Yes, I'm excited for this guest today. All of our guests are awesome, but Erin is just a gem. She teaches dancers how to make money using their gifts, embraces entrepreneurship, and for them to also build a sustainable online business. She's the host of the Dance Boss podcast, which if you have not listened to it, you need to add that to your favorites. It is incredible. Each and every week, she's bringing you guys, she's dropping knowledge. And Apollo also sponsors that podcast. We don't do that ever, and she's the only one we do. She's amazing. Erin is a Jersey girl. She graduated from Montclair State University with a BFA in dance and received her Master's of Education from NYU. She began her coaching journey as a dance education coach, providing resources and training to help dance educators run more successful classrooms, which she's also incredible at. And now she helps dancers niche down, build an online business, and bring in additional revenue for themselves and their families. Erin, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here. I am just like blown away by what you're doing. Apollo never ceases to amaze me. So you know that I value that partnership. And Melissa, I've heard amazing things about you. I already told you. Me and you have to connect. You are both powerful women. And again, it is an honor.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled to have you here. So you're an educator and an entrepreneur, no doubt. You obviously work with studio owners all over the country, even the world. How often does the topic of race pop up in your work with studios, and is this something we need to be discussing more?
Well, when the climate of the world changed and Black Lives Matter came to the forefront, there were more conversations about race. So unfortunately, it's not something that came up on the norm. Right. But I believe it is something that needs to be talked about all the time. Now I see more and more dance educators trying to find resources and ideas how to make their classrooms and their studios more inclusive. So now it's finally coming to the surface after a long time.
Yeah, because to be clear, this is not a new topic by any stretch. And that's one thing I always like to stress is like, you know, let's not pretend that this is something new, although we need to take this moment and the spotlight that is on the conversations that we're having and really maximize the potential for education here, right? So it's not new, but it's important nonetheless. And so we really want to take this moment and make sure that we're really utilizing this to educate ourselves and educate our dancers and make more inclusive environments. So with that, we're going to dig in, and Melissa, we want to get us started with our first question.
I have the first question absolutely ready, because this one's important. All of them are important, but this one is especially important right now because I have a feeling that a lot of dance educators are doing this, and we want to definitely give them some tools. So I just want to start out by acknowledging that this is a tough moment. We said that a little bit earlier, and in tough moments like this, with subjects that people just kind of want to turn away from, we often want to bury our head in the sand when it happens. So what are the positive outcomes of acknowledging moments like when a student brings up an issue of race in class versus pushing them under the rug?
Well, first and foremost, I'm so grateful that I had a college professor at NYU, Deborah DeMax, and she said, every opportunity in your dance classroom is an opportunity for social justice. So after she ingrained that into me personally, there was never a moment of this. So I approach education from a lens of making good humans. So we have conversations about everything. And what I suggest is not the educator waiting for students to bring it up, making conversations about race everyday things. And that doesn't mean it has to be about what is necessarily going on in the news. It means about whatever genre you're teaching, know the background of that genre and integrate that into your teaching practices. When you do things like that, conversations about race aren't so scary and aren't so hard. We have to start to make them the norm. And if it is uncomfortable for you, you just have to take the leap and start the conversation with some clear boundaries and guidelines. When you're facilitating conversations about race in your classroom, like Melissa and Bree set the precedent here, how do you want those conversations to happen? Because you are in control of them in your classroom. So don't let fear make you not talk about it. Just do preparation on the back end so you can be at ease when you are having those conversations with your students.
Right. And I love what you said about being proactive and understanding that when these conversations come up in your dance class, they're not moments to run. They shouldn't be, you should not want them. You should want them, because as an educator, like you said, everything that happens in your studio when you're with those kids is a moment for social justice. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely love that. What do you say to people who, which this is a comment that happens often, that say these type of conversations are divisive, especially if you're talking about being proactive with them? Mm-hmm. They don't want those conversations to be brought to the forefront because they see them as divisive. How do we overcome those objections?
I don't think that we can change people's mind. I think that more things like this just have to happen, and more people have to get educated on the impact that these positive conversations are going to have on their children. It's perspective, right? And a shift in a perspective is a miracle. So for those people who aren't leaning towards having these conversations, I'm just hoping that they're being exposed. That's what they need to do, be exposed so that they're ready to take the leap and try something new. Times are changing, and this should have happened a long time ago. So where are you going to stand with that? Are you going to stand in your old ways? Or are you going to be on the forefront of building good freaking humans for where our world is going? Because that's our job. Our students are going to step forward and not only step into dance roles, but they're going to be the people that lead our country. Like, are we going to give them the tools to understand how to do that? Yeah, sorry.
No, you get like
love the passion.
The passion is amazing. And I mean, I think we all feel it. I think that one of the things that prevents people from doing that a lot, even if they do want to take the step forward and they want to do it is, and you know, from your podcast and your work with people, sometimes that can affect the bottom line. If you get people, a mass exodus or a large group of your community based on where you are in the country is not down with the change, you know, you have to weigh those
Listen,
choices.
anytime we're getting into conversations that even remotely touch on people's value systems, it is very precarious, and you have to make a choice on how you're going to address those things. I don't think studio owners necessarily are out there going, I want to bury my head in the sand, but maybe that is masked a little bit by, okay, we're going to divert and go somewhere else. We're going to go back to dancing, and I'm just going to take the spotlight off here. When really, should we be going, this is more important to make the choice to have this conversation, and how do we get over the fear of the parents? Because let's be honest, that's really what it's about. Right. For a dance studio owner, for a teacher, we can dance around that all day, but at the end of the day, you don't want to piss off the parents. That's the reality, because that's their children and they have their own value system and their own beliefs at home. So how do we create a culture of inclusivity in our business and in our dance studio homes, which really that's what they are. They're homes, they're second homes for these children and their families, without assaulting a family's value system or attacking it in any way.
So I think the bottom line is, when you do work like this, and you start to speak out and make a studio space or a dance classroom space that talks about these issues, there are going to be some people, some parents that aren't with you. And that's a hard decision to make of where you want to stand. I think it's unrealistic to think that like every parent you'll get on board, but what you can do is make sure you're communicating and talking about the elephant in the room. You don't want to have these conversations in your studio. You don't want to start rolling out these procedures to your staff to have more inclusive classrooms, but you're not communicating to the parents. And this is where you either have parent meetings, you have emails, you have newsletters that address what you will be talking about in the new way you will be addressing inclusivity in your dance studio. And then from there, you're going to have to make a tough decision. You know, this is your bottom line. It's your number. If more people want to go, then stay with you because you're going this route. You have to decide what's valuable to you. And that's hard.
Basically saying, this is what the studio stands for. This is what the studio is about. And I want you to know this. But specifically related to those conversations, should a studio owner, can we just say to our parents in advance, look, these things are going to come up and I'm not going to shy away from them in the classroom. I hope you will join me in discussing these things at home with your child. But if these things come up, I am not going to shy away from them. And you know, we're going to address it appropriately and then move on and continue our dance education. Is that okay to say?
I think it's absolutely okay to say, but I think even a deeper layer of that is the studios looking at their mission statements and making sure that being inclusive is ingrained in that. Because just having those conversations is just one point when something pops up, but what are you going to do as a studio owner to make it a part of your culture? And I think changing the mission statement, having these regular conversations with parents and letting them know is going to help build that trust and let parents understand where you stand as an educator and as a studio owner.
So a lot of times, you know, as studios, we don't have a choice who walks in our door. You know, sometimes we don't have a choice, you know, what race we have in our student body. We don't have a control over what that mix is. Yet at the same time, I'm sure there's things we can do as studios to make sure that we're promoting and projecting the right message, that we are welcoming to embracing all different cultures and races and genders and identities. So what are some ways that we can accomplish that? Because at the end of the day, you can't control who walks in your door.
No, right. Absolutely
not.
Somebody
may look at your studio and go, I mean, there's a lot of white kids in here, but you don't have control over that. But are you making sure you're auditing the message that you're putting out into your community and who's welcome through your doors? And I think that's the bigger question, right?
Right. Well, I think it's having a diverse staff, a diverse group of people set work. I know at our school, we make sure we bring in choreographers who do work that's based in social justice as well, introducing the students to that. Rolling out something where your teachers, they don't have to become masters of dance history. I'm not a master of dance history, but I do know my history so that I can pull upon it and educate my students on it. So doing things like that is going to make the studio feel more inclusive. When you're just functioning off of this baseline level, we're here to dance, and not teaching any culture or not bringing in any culture, then it's not going to be inclusive. So start thinking about how you can draw that in by hiring faculty, by maybe seeing performances, by having discussions and critiquing work, by introducing dance history into your classes. All of those things help to the greater good of making a more cultural experience.
Yeah. And I love that. I love everything you just said. And I want to stress on the dance history. That's not just one style. It's not just hip hop. It's tap, it's jazz, it's ballet, because if you don't know where these things are coming from, there's no way that you can fully embrace and understand what you're learning as a student. So it's really, really important. Thank you for that. Was really nice and well-rounded explanation. But
I want to highlight something from we had a previous episode before the holidays with Aisha Upchurch, and she said something really impactful, and I wish I could remember who it was in the comments. One of our dance educators who was watching said, it's about who's on your walls when people walk into your studio. You can't have Fred Astaire on your wall and not the Nichols brothers, or you have to make sure that your walls and your space, even if that space is full of white kids, that it shows that we are honoring and we are accepting and we acknowledge the contributions of people of all races to the art of dance.
Exactly. We can't teach it through one lens. It's easy to fall back on our laurels, right? Rest on our laurels, what we know, what we learned. That's the thing about education. We have to do our work outside of the classroom to make sure we're giving our students the full experience. And it's not easy, but it's also not hard. It's just about taking action.
Well, and we talk about this all the time on the show, but as studio owners and directors and teachers, we get really wrapped up in the hamster wheel of life and the cycle of the dance season. And we don't make time for things outside of like the regularly scheduled activities. And so I think really making the effort and taking some energy and devoting it to educating yourself so that you can pass that education on is really important. And we're going to give you lots of resources at the end of this episode today on ways you can do that easily and quickly. We do have a comment here from Gina McFadden. Hi, Gina. Thank you for joining us again. She says, agreed, it is a culture to develop proactively rather than waiting for the discussion to come up among students. And that's absolutely right. So I want to dive into the second segment. And, in that moment when these topics come up, kids, things fly out of their mouth. They're very honest. You got to love them for that. We as adults panic. We start to sweat. We start to think about all the ways that this can go wrong. We start to visualize all the emails and the crazy conversations we're going to have following it with parents that maybe heard it from one perspective or another and are upset. Can you walk us through the first, second, and third most helpful things we can do to transition these sometimes uncomfortable moments and turn it into a learning moment for everybody?
Definitely. My first one is always pause, see where you're at. Are you in the mental capacity and are you equipped with the knowledge and the guidelines on the back to handle it? And if you're not, it's totally okay to pause. It's totally okay to regroup and say, you know what, that's a great question. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, and then figure out how you want to facilitate it. So always pause. Never feel pressured to act on anything. The second one is to really set up some guidelines, right? What do you want the conversation to look like? It's your classroom, and that could look like anything you want. Some examples of this with my students, but see, this doesn't start with just the conversations about race. It starts when we critique each other. It starts when we critique work and watch films. Like, our conversations have to be loving, they have to be caring, and they cannot be negative. So starting to have that kind of underlying tone throughout your classroom is going to help you facilitate conversations when they come up like this. So definitely having some guidelines. And number three, this is personal to me and everybody can have it's each your own, but I try to leave my opinion out of it and just leave it as a space where I nurture their points of view and I make sure that the conversation is going in a healthy tone.
Yeah. And how do you divert if it's not? Because kids also don't realize that some things coming out of their mouth can hurt, or maybe they're not intentionally so, but they don't realize the power of words at that point. So how do you divert that without missing the moment, missing the mark on educating in that moment?
I love that question. And it's like, I look at it the same as like when you're teaching a technical element, tendus, right? And a student is doing the technique wrong, you kind of pull back, correct them. So it's the same thing in this kind of conversation. I teach high school kids. That's my specialty. So that's what the lens that I'm talking from. What I do is pause my students. I go back. Okay, was that with love what you were saying? Was it said with hate? How are we running this conversation? And I'll have them repeat it to me. And then I'll give them an opportunity to restate whatever they wanted to say with those guidelines in place. And sometimes it's awkward and sometimes it's like fumbly, but that kind of reintroducing your expectations is where they kind of figure it out and you figure it out together. It does not have to be perfect, but your job as the facilitator of these conversations is the ability to say pause and let the awkwardness happen as you guys figure it out. And the next time you have this kind of conversation, it'll be better than the last time.
Mm-hmm. So this is not something that we, I'm just thinking of this now, but it's inevitable that some conversations with parents are going to follow when these things come up. So how do you prepare yourself for that? How do you make sure you're sticking with your value system? I can say for me, anytime I had to have a hard conversation with a parent, I came from a place of honesty and really trying to listen to their concern and really hear them before I spoke. It's hard to do sometimes.
But you have ducks in a row too. You couldn't just go in blind.
Yeah. Yeah. And that happens a lot. Sometimes you have no idea it's coming. I think you need to prepare yourself that it's a very big reality, especially when topics like this come up. But how do you handle those conversations?
Well, it was much different. It was much different when I was 25-year-old, just starting out teacher, and now I'm 40-year-old teacher, right? What I do now is check my ego because I used to respond in a way that was combative because, my ego was running the show. So just like you said, Bree, I really check my ego and I pause, and it's not about me. This parent is in front of me telling they're moving out of fear. People are upset because of fear, right? So what are they afraid of? That's what I want to get to in our conversation. Once I figure out what they're afraid of, I can then navigate as a human being. Okay, so they're scared. How am I going to help them feel safe? And then maybe adjust the way I'm doing things so that they can feel safe.
Where you're not compromising the value system for your studio and the inclusive culture that you're creating for your studio, but you're maybe coming from a place of like, I understand your concern and here is why I'm doing this. We can agree to disagree, but this is the environment that I have here. And maybe if you understand my motivation and my thought process, then we can reach some sort of common ground or compromise.
Yeah. And even saying like, so what makes you uncomfortable about this? Like, can you tell me, okay, what can I do to make you feel more comfortable? And then making a decision on if you are willing to go that way. And if you're not, like you said, expressing it. It's about having that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you also have to know why you have made the decision that you have. And you have to be very confident in that, so that when they say, well, I'm uncomfortable because of this, you have to be able to say why you think that the route that you are going is the one that is correct. And you have to stand in that truth. And just, as a point of learning from myself too, Erin, and you can, weigh in on this. I have found that a lot of the fear to talk to parents is about saying the wrong thing or making the wrong decision. And what I have had to learn and are still learning every single day is that it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
If I say A, B, C, and then I go home and I think, you know what, that wasn't the right decision. I'm a human being. I am somebody who makes mistakes, or now I have more information. There's nothing wrong with you going back and saying, ma'am, sir, I have more information now and I have changed my position. And now I believe
100%. Yeah, 100%.
We are very scared to do that as dance educators because we believe we're supposed to be all knowing, all right. When someone says something, we're supposed to have the immediate answer right now. That's dance culture.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest, that has a lot to do with ego, in dance, there's a certain amount of ego in the dance world and as a general rule. And I think it's a good lesson for dance educators, but also as an adult, like, kids, there's no shame in saying, look, I was wrong. I didn't know this, and I know this now, and I was wrong. And so here's the place that I'm coming from on this. I don't think there's any shame in that at all.
And I've done it a ton of times, like with classes and stuff. I'll have parents reach out, why isn't my daughter in this class? Why isn't my son in this class? And then sometimes they're not because of the evidence I have, but then other times I go home and I sleep on it and I'll be like, you know what, you're right. They have been working hard. That was my mistake. Just admit it. Like you said, Melissa, it makes your life easier. It's going to make the whole process easier.
And really one more thing, I know Melissa, you have another question for Erin, but when you operate and you come from a base level of just honesty and sincerity, and everything is easier. Everything is easier to explain. Everything is easier to do. Even the most challenging things are easier to do when you're coming from a place of just, my concern is what's best for everyone as a whole. And as a studio director, really that has to be your focus. You cannot focus on one child, one kid. It's what is best for my studio and this group of children that are really my second family. What is best for this group? And that should navigate or help navigate through all of your decisions, right?
Right. And even if you're making every decision with that lens, even if it's a decision that results in a parent leaving or, a big blow up conversation, you can stand knowing that your truth is, I did this for the good of the studio and the parents. And
repeat it over and over and over until you can sleep
at night. It's for the good. You have to We have a awesome comment from Andrea in the comments on Facebook Live. She said, it's about knowing your own positionality as a mentor, trainer, and teacher, knowing your own background experience and where you come from, in addition to the student's background and their experiences, because experiences are different for each person and can come from a different place. Even with the right intentions, which is what we're talking about, sometimes it can be misconstrued. So you have to look at it from, okay, where's this person coming from? And what I said, I find to be okay, but they're interpreting it in a way that is informed by their background. So that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're passionate.
I love that, Andrea. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So, and this kind of goes into my next question about communication. So communication in business, we know as dance educators and directors and studio owners that you have to communicate to your staff in order to keep the culture in line with your mission and your vision. So how do you make sure, Erin, that faculty members are upholding the same level of inclusivity and also, perpetuating the culture that you want?
This is a tough one. I will tell you, this is a tough one.
I'll tell you, I did own 2 studios. I'm a psycho though. I love policies. I love procedures. I love rubrics. Like that stuff excites me, right?
Yes, I love it. I love writing a standard operating procedure.
Right. Yeah, it's like, yes. So coming from that lens, right, from the person that loves it, you're going to have your guidelines outlined. You're going to have the teachers know their expectations per marking period, per quarter. But on a very simple scale, right? Maybe roll out for the first month some action items that you want your staff to have in their classroom related to inclusivity, right? Keep it simple. 2, 3 action items. And then figure out a process in which you want to monitor this. Do you want to pop in? Do you want them to fill out a survey? Are you going to pull students and ask them for feedback on the class? Like, there's no wrong way to do it, but it needs to be done. It's not something you could just be like, okay, guys, we're inclusive. Go make your class inclusive now. You know what I'm saying? You have to figure out, as the leader of your studio, what you want them to do. And then you have to give them direction, because these teachers might not know how to do it. So you are giving them the tools to roll out this in a powerful way in the classroom.
Yeah. And they need to understand why and where that's coming from so that they can make sure to execute that. Because I will tell you, setting these standard operating procedures is wonderful, and it is absolutely the first place to start. But at the end of the day, especially if you're a studio owner that is not in the classroom, because you are managing the greater, the studio, not just the competition program, but the studio itself as a whole, you don't know everything that's going on in that classroom, and you can't control what is coming out of people's mouths, how it's coming out of people's mouths. And so training and education is really, really important, not just for the studio owner, but for the entire staff, because if they don't understand the why, they don't understand the how, then your intentions are great, but it's going to fall flat, right?
I raised my hand, but this is what I wanted to say.
Don't raise your hand.
But this is why it's so important. Like, I love staff trainings, and not just staff trainings because you think you have to have them, and they don't have to be long, but just explaining to your staff, giving them some training, or bringing somebody else to give them some training on how to educate. That's not a bad thing. That's going to make your team stronger and your culture develop.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Thank you.
You have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So right. You can't say, hey, I need you to be inclusive in your classroom, and then shy away from issues of race when they come up in your classroom. So,
and look, that's not easy. I mean, that's good. Again, it's going to take time. It's going to take time outside of what you're already doing as a studio owner and a director. And so that's really important to know that this is a choice of, like, if I want to do this, and if I want to promote this culture at my studio, I have to do these things outside of what I'm already doing, because they need to get done.
Right. And Erin, you got an endorsement for your procedures. Fiona said, so true. Erin does not play with her procedures.
I love her. I love Dolphin.
She said she does not play with her procedures. So you got an endorsement on that one. I think that, the next segment is going to be one that we can definitely dive into. It could be actually this whole episode. We talked about, when we're talking to parents and we're talking to students, and Andrea brought that up of, you have to know what perspective they're coming from. But what work as dance educators do we need to do, because we come with our own set of experiences? And what's the personal work that you think we need to do as dance educators before we get into these situations to raise our consciousness and better serve our students?
Well, I just think it's about being educated. I remember when Black Lives Matter came about, and my friend Jenna Parker and I did a conversation. She's a dancer. She's huge in social justice. I didn't know as much as her. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, Jenna, help me, point me in the right direction. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it just starts there. I can't tell you to read a book, go to a talk, listen to a podcast. It's not about that. It's about figuring out where you want to learn and then actually taking action on it. Some other things, and I keep going back to dance history, just start to educate yourself, because that's going to open your mind, because we're not taught. I know I'm going to speak for me. In my undergrad, I wasn't taught all the layers of dance. I didn't really understand that it was so cultural. I was taught from one lens. So the more that I got educated, the more my mind opened up, and I understood, wow, I have more to learn. So I would start there, and I would look into some social and emotional learning. There's tons of resources online, and those can really help prompt conversations in your classroom that you can even use in your composition classes. You could just adjust the questions. So I think that's a good place to start.
So is this training for studio directors and owners, this training that we're talking about? And again, we're going to provide some resources today to help you through that if you want to get on that path, or if you want to explore that. Is this something that should be advertised? Like, is there, like, I feel like a lot of times when we're doing this work, right? Like, we want to, like, we're almost embarrassed of it. Like, we're doing we have to do this work. And so we don't talk about it. It's just unspoken. You don't share it with people. You're just kind of on your own. But I feel like it's something to be proud of. The people in your studio should know that you're on this journey and that you're exploring it. Is that something that should be advertised for a business?
I absolutely think so. I wish there was some kind of protocol or certification and you had that stamp on your studio. Just knowing that you went along this path to learn more. I think it's amazing. I think it's great for parents too, who want an inclusive studio, who want a culturally diverse studio. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But people need to make it. Somebody needs
right.
Yeah.
And there's some work, and we're going to talk about, there's some work being done. I think, the industry, it's challenging because there is no set governing body for this industry. And there is in a lot of other industries. There's just not for this one. And there's some good things that come with that and some bad things. And so I think if we just have to know to dig for those resources. And I think that's a problem. The more we have these conversations, the more we all kind of share our resources and the things that we've learned on our individual journeys, I think it will help everybody. So with that, Melissa, I think we have some homework.
We absolutely have some homework.
We always have homework. But
we have loads of homework. It's good homework. It's good work. But I want to highlight, Andrea made another great comment that staff trainings are great. They have to have follow-ups to make sure that there's actual implementation. That's where a lot of people fall off. They go, do this, do that, and then they move on with the unbelievable day-to-day task of being a studio owner or a director, and that follow-up and that wraparound, it doesn't happen. And I'm super passionate about continuing education outside of the dance, studio for dance educators. So having that education in place, like Bree said, pulling all the resources together that we have, and then following up to make sure that we're actually implementing is going to be really key. Thank you.
I love that. And it's like, you're the visionary as a studio owner. Yeah. Maybe there's a lead teacher who can be the integrator, who you can say, this is my vision. Can you make the plan and make sure it's followed up? Like you don't have to do everything. I run a high school dance program. I started a dance society so that I could start to delegate. I'm the visionary. Let's make the student choreographed show happen. How are you handling this? So we have to let go. Like, we have to do it all. There's people under you. There's people that their creativity needs to be nurtured. And you could be the person who hands a task off to them or a role off to them. And then you're bringing something out in them. It's all circular.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, talking about needing to follow up and work on yourself, and we have given people a lot of different charges during this time. So what is the one action that you want our listeners to take between now and next week to make progress in this area?
I want them to look at the genres that they teach, and I want them to think about how they can start integrating dance history into their technique class. So if they're teaching modern, what form of modern, what's the history of modern? And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have this whole paper and say, okay, modern started out here. And then, no, pick a few key things. And how do those things kind of tie into where we are today and what we're doing today, like that progression, and see if you could tie that into your classes. That's my charge.
Well, the beauty of dance, though, is like we have class every week in a studio environment I'm talking about, but we have class every week. And so again, pick a couple points, maybe spend the first 5-10 minutes talking about 1, 2, 3 points that you've learned, and then go on with your class and then do it again next week. And the more you do that in every single class, I mean, by the end of the year, how much education have they gotten?
Right.
And
that's the culture shift. That is understanding that we're talking about history, and talking about history from a very comprehensive perspective that includes everybody who contributed, not just the people that you learned about.
Right.
So yeah.
And then one more for people who want to feel inspired and feel like they want to have conversations in their class about what's going on right now. I would take 1 or 2 or 3 SEL questions, bring them to your class, and just let a conversation happen. And when it gets uncomfortable, you have the ability to pause it. Just start the conversation.
Right. Now, how can we follow you and listen to the Dance Boss podcast?
Yay! So the Dance Boss podcast is everywhere. My favorite place that it is on iTunes. So it's just Dance Boss Podcast. I'm always on Instagram. So come hang out with me.
Love your Instagram. I love it.
It's at Erin Pride. Yeah. And that's it. And you could DM me. I'm real laid back. We can have a conversation. Anything you want.
Wonderful. So Instagram, Erin Pride is her handle on Instagram. And then it's the Dance Boss Podcast on iTunes is her favorite, but you're on all the
platforms,
all the podcast outlets. So we have some resources that we're going to drop in the chat, both in Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. The first one we have is a workshop that Erin did with, is it Jenna?
Yes, it is Jenna.
Jenna Parker, about addressing racial issues in the classroom. So that is going into the chat in both places. You can access that, and Erin, that will be available to them through that link for indefinitely. So it's not that long. It's really short, but it's really, really impactful. It has a lot of great content.
And feel free to share it. There's no like email funnel. I just want it to get out so people can get educated.
Right. Take the module in the STEPS initiative. That's how this whole series came about. The STEPS initiative that was sponsored by Apollo Performance to make sure that dance educators had the resources and the tools that they needed to address the tough issues. Nutrition, dance science, sex abuse prevention, racism, all of those things are represented in this initiative, and it is totally free. Free, the best price ever. Free. And you can find it at apolloperformance.com.
I'm getting the link right now so I can post that.
For STEPS? Okay.
Yeah.
So the link for STEPS is going to be coming in there. And then Bree is going to drop a link in after that for another certification from YPAD. Which is awesome. YPAD has been offering some extremely detailed, extremely comprehensive trainings for people in a number of areas. And there is a YPAD certification right now. And we, for you, have a 25% off discount code.
Yes.
So for you, yes.
Anytime you click on that link, you are going to get anybody that clicks on that link is going to get 25% off their YPAD certification, which is huge, especially right now. Hold on, I'm going to repost the link for because they got blended together. I'm going to repost the link for the YPAD certification in the Zoom chat. But yeah, YPAD is doing great things. They are the closest thing our industry has to a standard right now. And they're doing great work tackling just education standards for the classroom and equality and inclusivity, and making sure they're addressing sex abuse and prevention. This is all on a greater scale. Your whole studio can get certified, your staff can get certified. We have conventions and competitions being certified now, which is all just really encouraging for the future of our industry. So please take a look at them at ypad.org. Again, you guys have your homework from Miss Erin Pride today, which is to go home and research your dance history, know your dance history, pass that along to your students. If you're an educator, if you're a parent or you're a dancer yourself, Google is a wonderful thing and you can find anything there. So start looking up your dance history. So we hope this episode today inspired you. We hope you learned something. We hope it gave you the confidence to go back to your studio and figure out what your stance is when it comes to race and equality, and how to make sure that your studio is a place of inclusivity and diversity. We hope it helps you dig deeper on how racism may impact your life, your day-to-day life, how you can be an ally, and more importantly, how you can hold affinity space in your circles, in your life, because that's really what is needed more than ever during this time, so that we can all advocate for change. It has never been more important for us to lead with empathy and love for one another than it is right now. So please consider that every single day. The recording of this full episode and all of our episodes are available on Facebook at Apollo Performance and on Apollo's IGTV. Again, Apollo Performance there, as well as Turning Point Dance Creations at TPDC _ IG. I got it. And if you register to join us on Zoom, you're going to get a recording of every episode emailed to you. We ask you to please share so we can get the word out and affect change in our community. We are booking for experts and guests for the spring. So if you have a topic you want to hear about, or if you think you could be a helpful guest for one of these episodes, please, by all means, email us info@Apollo Performance, or you can message us on Facebook or Instagram. Thank you again, Erin Pride, for your generosity with your time and just your wonderful spirit. We love you so much. Melissa, thank you as always for being on this journey with me. Join Melissa and me next week, Friday, January 15th, with Lee Witzling, and we're going to talk about another pretty heavy topic, what to do when a student confides in you about sexual abuse. This topic is so important and something that we need to be equipped and educated on, especially as dance educators. So we hope to see you there next week. Until then, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps, and everybody have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Thank you, Erin, so much.
Thank you.
Are we still live?
We are. We're hanging out now.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye,
Wait,
Bye.
can I take a picture?
Yes. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
that's right. Erin, Instagram queen.
She Instagrams everything.
Ready? Hold on.
Yep.
Hold on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna tag you.
Yes. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody. Happy Friday.